This is the strongest Diablo 4 build that you've never heard about. I put my latest version of Stormclaw on hold because I was so excited about this build. In fact, this is the same feeling I had when I made Stormclaw the first time. If everything works as intended, this is going to be the strongest build for Season 2. This is the only build in the entire game that I am aware of that is start to finish brand spanking new. It is the furthest off meta you can go. So if you really like interesting builds that nobody is using, this is definitely the build to use. Now let me show you why. All right, so first off, let me talk about what this build is. This build is going to use Lacerate. It's an ultimate that the Druid uses that no one, or I should say, it's an ultimate that nobody uses on the Druid, at least not till now. So I broke this down into different categories. So the most important one is cooldowns. So gear cooldowns. We can get 30.9% cooldown reduction purely from our gear. Then we have Anticipation, which is one of the vampiric skills coming in, and this gives us minus 20% cooldown reduction. Then we've got Flicker Step, which can give us 16 seconds on a single enemy or 40 seconds off of a group of mobs. Then we have to factor in the amount of time that we're in the ultimate, which is 2.2 seconds. And by the way, we're immune the entire time we're in the ultimate. Then we have to factor the amount of time we're going to be casting skills in between, and it's about a second. In addition, Calm Before the Storm can give us minus 2 seconds from our ult time. And I actually forgot to add here, Hectic. Hectic gives us minus 2 seconds as well. Now, assuming that we didn't get any Calm Before the Storm procs or Hectic procs, that's going to be somewhere between 0 seconds left on our cooldown or 7.35 seconds left on our cooldown. That's hardly any time at all. And in case there's any questions that come up, we only get a 2.5% chance to get a reset on Calm Before the Storm, but it's the only thing in that category that's valuable at all. If we were to use Masochistic, using our ultimate would only give us a 0.6825% chance to even get one proc on the healing. Now, what you're going to see when I show you the full build is that I've decked out the stats completely into damage on the gear. Everything is in damage. We don't have to have the survivability you normally have in a build. The reason for that is we're getting the immunity during the ultimate, and we've got Protecting Aspect, which gives us another immunity bubble if we take too much damage. But that's not all. We're using Hunter's Zenith, which allows us to get resets on Debilitating Roar after we use the ultimate and get a kill with the Werewolf ability. That's a 70% damage reduction. We've got Hurricane, that's a 20% damage reduction. Then we've got Bulwark, this is giving us Unstoppable and a barrier. Storm Strike is giving us a 15% damage reduction. We're healing constantly. Vigilance is giving us 15% damage reduction. Iron Fur is giving us 9% damage reduction. Heightened Senses is giving us 24% damage reduction. And that's because we get an extra 12% from our Hunter's Zenith. And that's just including the damage reduction we're getting from our skills that we can use within 1 second after our ultimate. As soon as the ult ends, Debilitating Roar, Bulwark, Hurricane, all at once. You can do them in 1 second. I've recorded it, I've gone through and I've checked. You can do it in 1 second. You're instantly getting a massive spike in damage reduction right after you're immune. And that lasts 4 seconds. So remember our previous time, the max we could have is 735 on a boss. So basically more than half of that time is already going to be super protected. And that's not including what we have in our Paragon. Now let's talk about the damage a little bit. So for one, we're able to put way more willpower and all stats on our gear than we normally do. Quick Shift is going to give us 60% more damage. 60%. We get the normal 15% from the passive. We get 30% from the Hunter's Zenith. At least assuming I understand what the patch notes meant, because it said 200% of the original value, which I'm assuming means it was 3 and then it's going to 6. We'll have to see. And then another 3 from the amulet. So it's 60% or possibly 45% if I misunderstood what the ring does. Then we've got Lupin Ferocity. This is going to give us a 70% multiplier in 2 out of our 13 hits during our ultimate. Keep in mind that we also, with our ultimate on the first hit, get 150% extra damage. So if that happens to multiply with that 70%, that's just going to be a crazy hit. Also, if the enemy happens to be injured, it's 140% damage. Then we've got Anticipation. This is 12% per enemy that is poisoned around us when we use our ultimate. Now, I don't know for sure if this is additive or multiplicative damage, but I'm leaning towards additive because it's a lot if you have a lot of enemies around. Prey on the Weak. Again, I don't know if it's additive or multiplicative, but I want to say multiplicative because it's only 16%. Then we've got Tybalt's Will. I haven't seen the stats on this item yet, but I'm assuming we'll use it because it's just straight 40% damage increase. If not, we'll just throw another defensive aspect into the build and go for the stats I recommend on Mobilytics. Then we've got our Conceited Multiplier, 37.5% because it's on our amulet. Edge Masters is another 20%. Inner Calm is 10 to 30%, depending on when it actually ticks. Avian Wrath, I believe it's additive right now, but it says it's multiplicative with the little X on it. So it's either a typo or maybe they plan to change it, who knows. Envenom is a 60%. Outmatch is another 16%. Vulnerable, 20%. Criticals, 50%. Heightened Malice, 45%. We get 200% additive critical damage from our spirit. Fang and Claw, another multiplicative 12%. And I threw Exploiters onto the build. Maybe I'll change this. I don't really know what to put in that slot. But if enemies happen to be unstoppable, that's a pretty big multiplier as well. And then we have a ridiculous amount of additive damage in this build. Ridiculous. It is the most you will ever see in any functional build. Now, it doesn't stop there. Let's go to our critical strike chance. All right, we've got 12% on our gloves, 7.5% on our rings, and on our offhand. Our Shapeshifter gives us 20% crit chance on our ultimate. Lupine Ferocity gives 100% crit chance in one of those 6 hits. I'm not too worried about that one. Our Dexterity gives us a passive 10% or more. Sanguine Brace gives us 8%. Scythe Talons gives us 5%. And Poison Creeper gives us 20%. Now, that total comes up to 97.5% critical hit rate. Okay, but because we get so many more stats on our gear, we can actually cap our critical strike chance to 100% for this. 100%. That's assuming we used Poison Creeper beforehand, which is the only factor that could differentiate between an 80% and 100%. Now let's go back to what I played at the beginning of the video, so I can show you the skill rotations. So first you're going to be dashing towards the group, you're going to cast Poison Creeper, and then you're going to use your ultimate. As soon as your ultimate ends, you're going to be using Debilitating Roar, then Bulwark, then Hurricane, Storm Strike, spam all of your dashes so you can get the cooldown. Then you're going to use Poison Creeper and go straight into your ultimate again. If your ultimate isn't up, make sure you don't use Poison Creeper because you want to have that extra critical hit chance when you use your ultimate. So save Poison Creeper always till right before your ultimate. If you're still waiting for a few seconds for your ultimate, use your Storm Strike to keep that extra damage reduction and to try and get more procs from Hectic and Calm Before the Storm. And that's it. You repeat that cycle endlessly. I will mention though, if you have Tempest Roar, you could take Poison Creeper off of the build, and your Hurricane will apply damage to the enemies instead. That will allow you to toss Shred into the build so that you can dash to enemies quicker and improve your speed farming. Alright, let me break this build down for you. Keep in mind, if you're someone who's wanting to use this build for leveling, it is a possibility, but I'd recommend only people who are really experienced and know how to modify their build as they go do that, because it's far too complicated for me to try and list everything you would need to do. But I did include a basic guideline down at the bottom, so check out the Mobalytics guide if you want to see that. So just like we talked about before, we've got Storm Strike, Lacerate, Debilitating Roar, Earthen Bulwark, Hurricane, and Poison Creeper. For Spirit Boons, we're going to be using Wariness, Scythe Talons, Avian Wrath, Calamity, and Calm Before the Storm. There's not really a lot of room to move these around. You could take the critical damage out of Avian Wrath and toss it into Pack Leader, but our lucky hit chance is so low that it's not really worth it. I did the math on it. I didn't feel like it was worth it. So that's up to you. It could reset your Poison Creeper occasionally, but I'd rather just take the flat 30% critical damage. Also, if you need the survivability, just throw the Avian Wrath into Iron Feather. But I have a good feeling we won't need it for this build. But if you do need survivability, max health is one of the best ones because we heal a certain percentage of our health, which means the more health we have, the more health we heal. Now this is intended to be a very endgame build, but you can work with what you have. So Harlequin Crest, obviously that's an uber unique. If you don't have the Harlequin Crest, you can always just put Aspect of Might there and use the stats that I listed here. For chest armor, we're using Protecting Aspect. That's going to give us immunity when our health goes low. This is very important because it fills the gap in between our ultimates if we happen to be in a sticky situation. For our gloves, I've got Exploiters on there right now. I'm not sure what I want to put here. There wasn't a whole lot that I really liked. Exploiters gives us a chance to do 40% more damage to certain enemies, and I would definitely use this for PvP or something. But to be honest, there's not a lot of aspects that really work well with this. It was very tricky to put together. This is by far the weirdest build I've ever made. Hey guys, while editing, I found a couple things that I wasn't sure about previously that I actually got resolved. So on the gloves, we, instead of Exploiters, because it's a very situational item, we're going with Aspect of Elements. Half of the time this is going to give us an increase to physical damage, and that's up to 30%, which is pretty damn good. And then the other half the time we're going to get the increase to poison, which we're not getting as much of, but it still is usable in both situations. So it's actually a pretty good passive increase. I also thought about something in the skill order. So I talked about how we use the Debilitating Roar and then Bulwark. We need to actually have Bulwark up before we go into our ultimate because we're getting a 37% damage increase when we have a barrier. So we are gonna want to use Bulwark and then Poison Creeper and then go into our ultimate all at once right before we hit the ultimate. So that's just a little bit different. You won't have the Unstoppable from the Bulwark as soon as you get out of the ultimate, but you will have the Debilitating Roar, and it actually works out nicely this way because we're kind of spreading out our survivability. So as soon as you get out of the ultimate, you're going to use Debilitating Roar. You're going to instantly dash once, and that's going to give you the Unstoppable from our Vampiric ability. And then you do the other stuff in the combo that I mentioned, and you get your dashes in, you do the Bulwark, you do the Poison Creeper, and then you. For the pants, we've got the Tybalt's Will. For the boots, we got Flicker Step. Flicker Step is the most important thing for this build. However, if you are doing the leveling thing, like I said, it's possible to do it without it, but then you got to invest more into attack speed and your basic attacks. Maybe throw on Great Staff the Crone, try and get those resets in a different way. Because Hectic is going to be your only other way to get the ult back quick enough. For a weapon, we've got Aspect of Inner Calm. When we stand still, we just get a bit more damage each second. Then we've got Conceited Aspect on the amulet. This is just a nice almost 40% damage increase. We've got Edge Masters, another 20% damage increase. Hunter Zenith, this one's very important for the build because when we get a kill with our wolf abilities, this is going to give us a free cast of Debilitating Roar. So when we use our ultimate, we get a kill with it, then we use Debilitating Roar, and it comes off cooldown instantly. And then we don't use it, we go into our ult again, we get another proc of Hunter Zenith, and then we use it for free again, and we just keep doing that. If you use it back to back though, get the free reset and then spam it again, or like accidentally double click it, you're going to lose that cooldown and you might not get it back in. So make sure you're aware of that. Then on the offhand, we've got Rapid Aspect. We've got Rapid here just so that we can get a little more attack speed to help us get those basic attacks out. So for the stats, I listed stats for every piece of gear, even if I was recommending a unique, just so that if you don't have the unique, you have something to use in that. So on the helmet, we're using cooldown reduction, willpower, all stats, and basic skill attack speed. Keep in mind on any of these that if you need more survivability, you can swap out the less important things like basic skill attack speed or willpower, all stats. Those types of things are very adjustable, so make sure you adjust them if you need to. But this is a good general guide. On the chest armor, we're going ultimate skill damage, werewolf skill damage, damage while shapeshifted, and physical damage. Yeah, I told you we're going damage. For the gloves, we're going critical strike chance, critical strike damage with werewolf skills, willpower, and all stats. On the pants, we're going willpower, all stats, maximum life, and damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned. On our boots, we're going movement speed, willpower, all stats, and damage reduction while injured. Although the damage reduction while injured, you could go with lots of different things. Maybe I'll go with dodge chance or whatever I end up getting here. I'm not too worried about it. On our one-handed weapon, we're going with ultimate skill damage, critical strike damage with werewolf skills, critical strike damage, and willpower. Oh, also on the boots, I should mention, we want to have boots that have +3 dashes because we want as many dashes as possible for that cooldown reduction. For the implicit on the weapon, we're going to be going with damage to healthy enemies. That's one-handed axes. For our amulet, we're going cooldown reduction, ranks of the Envenom passive, ranks of quick shift passive, and ultimate skill damage. You could also go with things like damage while shapeshifted, lots of different defensive stats, movement speed. There's many things that could go here, but I really think stacking damage as much as possible, so we just bomb things with our ultimate is the best way to go. For the rings, we're going with critical strike chance, critical strike damage with werewolf skills, critical strike damage, and physical damage. We could also do vulnerable damage instead of any of these, or maximum health if we need the survivability. And by any of these, I mean anything besides critical strike chance. And then for our offhand, we're doing cooldown reduction, critical strike chance, all stats, and willpower. There are some things here that are extremely high priority. You need cooldown reduction no matter what on your offhand, your amulet, and your helmet. You also want to make sure you get critical strike chance on both rings and your gloves, as well as your offhand. Pretty much everything else is reasonably flexible, so just work with what you get. Now for our gems, we've got diamond on the weapon because this gives ultimate damage. We've got ruby on our armor, and then we've got diamond on our jewelry. Although we can also possibly put skulls in our jewelry. It depends on how the numbers come out. If you need more resistance, go with resistance. If you don't need it, put it in armor. For our vampiric powers, we've got anticipation. This is the most important one. That's that 20% cooldown reduction and 12% increased damage for every enemy that's poisoned near us. Then we've got Metamorphosis. This one's going to pair really well with the dashes we have to do. Because we have to dash in order to get our cooldown back with Flicker Step, we're also going to be getting 160% damage for every enemy that we pass through. We're going to inflict them with Vampiric Purse. We're going to inflict them with Vampiric Curse, which is also going to make them vulnerable because of Prey on the Weak. And this is going to make us unstoppable in case we don't have our Bulwark up. Then we've got Sanguine Brace. This fills in the gap so that we can hit that 100% critical strike chance. This is also one of our best sources of Fortify, so that's really useful. Then we have Hectic. That's going to help you with your cooldowns. You want to hope that these procs go onto your ultimate, especially if it still has a bit to cool down. But you're not going to be basic attacking that much in between your ultimate. And then, of course, Prey on the Weak, 16% more damage to vulnerable enemies. And if they're affected by Vampiric Curse, then they have vulnerable on them, which Metamorphosis is going to do. Now, if you need any more of an explanation on the build, I did put all of the info in here, and I'm probably going to update it even more. Sorry for how this looks. I haven't saved the build yet because finish everything and then do it all at once. But yeah, so if you need more information, just make sure you hit up the written guide on Mobalytics, and it can also be found in my Discord at discord.gg/screamheart. We already covered skill rotation. We already covered leveling, speed farming. Oh yeah, I should note this. So this is the first iteration of the build. When I put out a build the first time, I always lean on the side of more damage, and then I whittle it back to where it needs to be. I don't think that we're going to need to add much survivability at all, if any, because not only is there a lot of it in the build already, but we're immune half the time and we have like a backup and everything. So we'll see how it goes. If I get up to like, tier 80 Nightmare Dungeons and I'm like, oh, I'm getting one shot, then obviously I have to add in a bit more survivability. So we've got Storm Strike, and we're taking Fierce Storm Strike so we can get the vulnerable on enemies, and this also gives us a 15% damage reduction. We got this whole group of passives here. This is damage reduction, critical strike chance, and movement speed. And I actually just realized that we're already capping our critical strike chance, so those points are going out of there. And where can we put these? Well, I couldn't really find anything I really wanted to put them in, so I'm just going to drop them into Debilitating Roar. It'll drop the cooldown a little bit in case we don't get a reset and we have to wait for it. We max out Bulwark. We're grabbing Preserving Earth and Bulwark. We're maxing out Ancestral Fortitude and Vigilance. We're maxing out Poison Creeper, and we're getting Brutal Poison Creeper. That's that 20% extra critical strike chance that we want. Then we're going to max out Hurricane and grab Savage Hurricane for that damage reduction. Then we're going to max out Envenom and Toxic Claws. Finally, we're getting our ultimate at both points there. Our Keystone passive, Lupin Ferocity. And we're going to get Quick Shift and Heightened Senses and max those out as well. One of the great things about this build is everything we want in the build gets maxed out. You don't run into any missed potential like you do in some builds. So for our Paragon boards, we're going to do Undaunted on the first board. This is the only one that I'm kind of considering whether or not I'll have to change it. We shouldn't have to, but if we don't maintain our Fortify as well as I'd like, I might change this for. Now moving up, we're grabbing the Heightened Malice board. And our first glyph here is going to be Outmatch. And then we are going to grab a couple of rare nodes, a couple more rare nodes, another rare node, and then we're going to grab Heightened Malice. Moving to the right, we're grabbing the Inner Beast board, grabbing a couple of rare nodes, and we're getting Shapeshifter here. That's that 20% critical strike chance. From here, we want to grab these couple of rare nodes and then head out to the right. Here, we're going to grab 3 rare nodes as well as Fang and Claw. Then we're going to move down, and we're going to grab the 1 rare node and put Spirit here, and we're going to grab all the Dexterity. That's going to give us a massive amount of critical strike damage. And oh look, another multiplier I missed for the beginning of the video. So we have another 12% multiplicative damage. After this one, we're going to want to move back up above our Inner Beast board. And we're going to be putting Survival Instincts here. And on this, we're taking Tracker. Tracker is pretty nice because it's going to give us more damage, but it's also going to make our poison last longer. That means our Poison Creeper will last the entire duration of the ult and make sure we get those critical strikes. And it's also just going to give us more damage with our poison, which is, it's decent. This is what the boards look like when you're done with them. And if you don't know already, if you aren't hitting your bonuses on your different rare nodes around the board, make sure that you go through and you tweak the nodes just a little bit. So, maybe you've got a corner where you could go one way or you could go the other way, and one way is going to give you dexterity and the other way is going to give you intelligence, or one's going to give you willpower, the other one's going to give you dexterity, and just tweak them around a little bit and make sure you get your bonuses. You should be able to easily hit them with this build because we get a lot of all stats and a lot of willpower. Now, if you guys don't mind, make sure you comment, like the video, and subscribe because I'm going to be updating this as soon as I get my hands on it with any changes I need to put in it, any adjustments, and, you know, obviously showing you the gameplay so you can see how it works. But on that note, I think we're done here. Daddy Druid out.
Oh, it's built so good.